Welcome back everyone to Programming Horizons. In today's video, we will learn how to implement a queue using array in C++ with a simple menu-driven program. I will first explain the logic with simple diagrams and then we will dive into the actual code. So let's get started. But first, a quick recap of what is a queue. A queue is a linear data structure that follows the first in first out principle. Think of it like a line at a ticket counter where the person who comes first gets served first. Now in our program, we are going to implement a queue using an array. So let's suppose that the array that we see here will behave like a queue. Every queue maintains two pointers called front and rear. Front points to the index of the first element of the queue, whereas rear points to the index of the last element of the queue. So initially when the queue is empty, both front and rear have been set to -1, which indicates the null value. Now let's suppose that I want to insert value 10 into the queue. So first of all, insertion in case of queue is known as enqueue operation. So in order to insert value 10 into the queue, we will have to first update both front and rear to index 0. That means at this index we will insert value 10. So now both front and rear are 0. This means this is the only value in the queue. Now let's suppose that we want to insert value 20 into the queue. So in this case, front remains fixed because 10 is the first element to get inserted into the queue. But the second element that we will insert will be inserted at the back of the queue, just like a person coming at the back of the line. So this time rear will get incremented by 1. So therefore rear will be pointing to index 1 and now we can insert value 20. Next, let's suppose that we want to insert value 30 into the queue. Then once again we will increment rear by 1. So earlier it was pointing to index 1. Now it is pointing to index 2. And at this new rear value we will be inserting value 30. In the same way we can insert 40 into the queue by updating rear by 1. And then we will place value 40 at the new rear position. So first we increment the rear value and then we insert the element into the queue. Now here we see that the queue is already full, but if we try to make more insertions, then in that case we will have this overflow message printed on the screen. So this is the logic behind the enqueue operation in a queue. Now let's understand the logic behind the dequeue operation. So dequeue means removal or deletion of the first element of the queue. So in this case, as you can see, the queue is already full. Front is pointing to index 0 while rear is pointing to index 3. And now if we perform the dequeue operation, then the first element, that is 10, will be removed from the queue. So this is what we get after performing the first dequeue operation. Now this time front will be incremented by 1 and rear will not be touched. Rear is only used for insertion. So in this case front is pointing to index 1 and this means the first element of the queue now is 20. So once again if we perform the dequeue operation, then 20 will get removed and once again front will be incremented by 1. So it points to index 2 and 30 becomes the first element of the queue. If we again perform the dequeue operation, then 30 will also get eliminated from the queue. So after eliminating 30, we can see both front and rear point to the same index, which is index 3, that is the last index of the queue where 40 is placed. So this is the only element left in the queue. If we again perform the dequeue operation, then we are left with an empty queue and this time front and rear are both pointing to null or the index -1. So if we again try to perform the dequeue operation, then this time we will get the underflow message because the queue is empty, so no more deletions are possible. Now let's dive into the code. So everyone, I'm inside CodeBlocks IDE and now we are going to implement queue using arrays in C++. First of all, let's declare all the variables that we require to create our program. We first require an array that will store all the elements. Let's call this array as queue. And here we are fixing the size of the array as 4 so that maximum 4 elements can be stored in the array. In addition, we also require an item variable to temporarily store the value that we want to insert or remove from the queue. We also require two more variables. One is rear This will keep track of the index of the last inserted element of the queue, and initially we will set rear to -1. So here -1 means null value. In the same way, we also require another variable front, which will also be set to null initially, and this will store the index of the first element of the queue. Once again, it has null value. So all the variable declarations are done. Now let's create the functions. So the first function that we require is Enqueue function, which is used for insertion into the queue. So here, before inserting a value into the queue, we will check for overflow condition, and that will be checked like this. If rear is equal to the largest index of the queue, which is 3 in this case because the size of the queue is 4, that means the queue is already full. So in this case, we will display a message /n overflow, and after that queue is full, no more insertions possible, and after that we will type return. Otherwise, if the queue is empty, then in that case we will check for this condition. If front is equal to -1 and rear is also equal to -1, then in that case we will first change rear to 0 and front also to 0, and after that we will ask the user to provide us the value that the user wants to insert into the queue. So here we will display a prompt, enter the item that you want to insert into the queue, and after that we will get the value inside item variable. After this line, we are going to insert this item at the rear position of the queue and then display a message item inserted into the queue. Alright. And then there is a third case where the queue is neither full nor empty, and in this case we are left with some space in the queue. So in this case we are going to simply increment rear by 1. So rear equal to rear plus 1, or you can type here rear plus plus, that is also okay. We are just incrementing the rear value by 1. So in this case, once you update the rear value, then again ask the user for the item and then store the item in item variable. So basically we are just going to copy paste this code here. So first we ask the user, enter the item that you want to insert into the queue. Once we get the value, then we will insert that value at the rear position of the queue and then display this message. So here we complete our Enqueue function. In the same way, we are going to create our Dequeue function, which is used for deletion or removal of an element from the queue. Just like in case of Enqueue, we have checked for overflow. In case of Dequeue, we are going to check for underflow condition. So here we will first type if the queue is empty, which will be checked by this condition, if front is equal to null and rear is also equal to null, then in that case we will display this message /n underflow, then comes queue is empty, and then no more deletions possible, and after this we will type return. Otherwise, if there is a single element in the queue, then we have this condition, if front is equal to rear, that means both front and rear are pointing to the same index but are not null. So that means there is a single element in the queue, and in that case we will first remove the element and then update front and rear. So to remove the element we will use item variable, and in the item variable we will store the element that is at the front position of the queue. So here we perform the dequeue operation, and after that we will set front to null and rear also to null, and then we can display here /n item then is deleted from the queue. Then there is a third condition where the queue has more than one elements and we are removing the first element from the queue. So here first we remove the value at the front of the queue and store it in item variable. After that we will change front to front plus 1. That means we increment the front so that it points to the next element in the line, right? And then once again we can copy paste this line, item deleted from the queue, and now our dequeue function is also complete. Let's create the third function, which is void display, and this function is used to display all the values from front to rear, but once again we will first check whether the queue is empty or not. So the same conditions that we have written before, if front is equal to null and rear is also equal to null, then in that case we are going to display this message, queue is empty, and then we can type nothing to display. Okay, after this return. Otherwise we are going to use a for loop to display all the elements of the queue. So we will use an I variable to keep track of all the index values, and we will then create a for loop like this: for I equal to front, I less than equal to rear, I plus plus, and inside this loop we are going to type queue, and after that provide the position or the index of the values, and then /t, a tab space to put some space between the values. And before this loop, let's also display this line displaying the elements of the queue /n, and then comes the loop, and this is how we write our display function. So all our functions are now complete. So let's create the main menu. So here we are going to define the main menu like this. We will first type here the header of the menu. So this main menu is the header. After this let's also put one /n here. After this I am providing all the options. /n, 1 is for enqueue, then /n, 2 is for dequeue, /n, 3 is for display, /n, 4 is for exit, and after that we are going to ask the user /n, enter your choice, and this choice will go in a variable called choice. So here I am declaring this choice variable, which is used to store the choice entered by the user. And now we are going to make use of switch case statement to choose one of the options from the menu. So here we have case 1 for enqueue function. So if the user presses 1, which indicates enqueue, so this enqueue function will be called here, and after that we will put a break statement. Otherwise we are going to choose the second option. Case 2 is for dequeue function. Once again we will put a break here, and then comes case 3, which is for display function. Once again we will put here break. Then comes case 4, which is used to exit the application. So here we will first display a message exiting the program, and after this we are going to call this exit function exit 0. This is a default function to exit the program or application. And next is default, and this case will be executed if the user presses something which is not on the menu. So in that case we will display invalid choice, and after that please try again. So let's save the program first and now build and run the code. Alright everyone, we have got an error here because I missed a bracket. So let's rerun the code. Here also we have missed something. Alright, in the end we have forgotten the while loop, and we must write here while choice is not equal to 4. So until the user chooses to exit, keep on displaying the menu again and again. So this condition I forgot. Let's retry, and yes, this time we have got our main menu on the screen. So we choose option 1 here. Enter the item that you want to insert into the queue. So I insert 10 here, item inserted into the queue. Let's enter a few more elements, 20, 30, 40, and then once again if I try to insert, then we get this message, overflow, queue is full, no more insertions possible. Okay, so let's display all the elements, and we have this message displaying the elements of the queue 10, 20, 30, 40. Now let's start dequeuing all the elements one by one. So I choose option 2 here. 10 is deleted from the queue. Now if we display the elements, then we have 20, 30 and 40. Let's again dequeue and display. So we are left with 30 and 40. Once again dequeue and display. So we are left with 40 only. Now there is a single element. So once again dequeue and display. Queue is empty, nothing to display. After this, if you want to again remove an element, underflow, queue is empty, no more deletions possible. So if we again try, again the same message, and if we want to insert more elements, then again the message is displayed. So let's insert a few more elements, this time 87, and let's display them. So we have 45, 57, 87, and finally we exit the application, exiting the program. And this is how our queue is implemented using arrays in C++. Here are a few practice problems that you must try on your own to get a better understanding of how queues work. If you come up with any problems or doubts, then don't forget to post them in the comment section below. I would be happy to help. If this helped, then don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more beginner-friendly tutorials like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Happy coding! Happy coding!